It's a good thing that they did do just that. Like, literally on mangoes and coffee and pretty much everything else.
We're going to dive straight in with our main story this week, which concerns the ongoing chaos of Trump's tariffs. It's been an emotional roller coaster since Trump rolled them out last week with the help of the single dumbest chart in human history. That prompted the Dow to drop by nearly 4,000 points in 2 days. So by Monday, everyone was understandably freaking out, only for Trump to dismiss anyone concerned as panicans, which he said was a, quote, new party based on weak and stupid people. Though I'd argue the weak and stupid demo is, if anything, way overrepresented in government right now. Then on Tuesday, Trump gave a speech to Republican donors where he floated major new tariffs on pharmaceuticals, told the audience, I know what the hell I'm doing, and claimed this.
I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything.
Yeah, I'm sure some have been pretty nice to him, the same way that you try to be nice if you suddenly found yourself in the same room as a monkey with a gun. Hi, monkey. Good monkey, strong monkey. Please, I'll do anything. By Wednesday morning, though, Trump's reassurances were getting more desperate as he at one point posted, be cool, everything is going to work out well. A sentence that's never been true in human history. That is the phrase you hear before someone skateboards off a roof, shows you their homemade water slide, or asks you to hold the camera while they climb into the alligator exhibit to do something hilarious. Just a few hours later, Trump announced a 90-day pause on most of his biggest tariffs, and he did it so abruptly, it caught some key members of his own administration by surprise.
A sudden change in policy came as Democrats grilled his top trade representative on Capitol Hill.
It looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago, sitting here, we saw you.
That's true. That's true. That congressman later tweeted out this photo showing what it looked like to watch that guy get the news. And how do you think he found out? A push notification? A work email? Or 32 concurrent messages on the office group text where one guy goes, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck? And another goes, holy shit. Another's like, lol, J fucking K, I guess. And the guy who's always asked dumb questions is like, wait, what's happening? And then the first guy sends the link to the Times article, and then the dumb one's like, oh my God, what the hell did this just happen? And then everyone at the same time texts, yes, Cody. This week was total chaos. At one point, the daily trading range of the S&P 500 was more than 5% for 6 straight days. The previous times that happened were in March 2020, during COVID, late 2008, during the housing crisis, and October 1987, which, if you are too young to remember, was a stock market crash so massive, Nightline felt like it needed to do this to explain it to people.
Here once again to help us, my good friend Kermit.
Take it then. Can you tell us what is a bear market?
Yes, Ted, well, thank you. Being a bear myself, that is one of the first things we bears are taught in the caves. If I recall, a bear market is where prices are going down for a long period of time.
So one would wish, I suppose, for a bull market to drive the bears out.
No, we don't want that. We never want that.
Yeah, they explained a complicated financial crash with Muppets. A sentence so this show coded, I'm genuinely surprised that we didn't think of it. Honestly, if Ted Koppel had a British accent, glasses, way less gravitas, and occasionally referred to Kermit as a bona fide swamp snack, I couldn't tell the difference there. And the thing is, the turmoil isn't over, because what Trump's left in place, including a baseline 10% tariff on all imports and a 145% tariff on China, is still a monumental shift in US trade policy. And despite what some in the White House claim that the 90-day pause was part...
I need the Rizzler to explain to me what's going on like this. Yeah. Too bad.
The
we don't even do that anymore.
All along.
We
Trump
used to be a country.
Himself seemed to admit that he did it in reaction to the markets panicking.
I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
Hold on. A little bit afraid is a massive understatement. People were freaking out about their 401ks. There were grandmas looking at their retirement plan and getting ready to open an OnlyFans to get through the next 5 years. And it wasn't just ordinary investors. One financial analyst wrote after talking to fund managers, a few have quietly wondered if the president might be insane. Which is fair. Everyone knows the right time to ask if someone might be insane is 5 months after you elect them president. Look, this week was incredibly stupid, but it's important to understand exactly how stupid it was because we're not out of the woods yet. And the damage the president's already done to confidence in our economic system could have lasting repercussions. So tonight, let's talk about Trump and his tariffs. Let's start with the fact that none of this should have been a surprise. Not only did Trump bring up the idea of 10% universal tariffs repeatedly on the campaign trail, he's been obsessed with the idea of punishing other countries with tariffs for years now. In fact, when he touched off a trade war with China in his first term, we spent 21 minutes unpacking it, and the arguments hold up pretty well, although I clearly do not. As evidenced by a YouTube comment from this week, which said, "I thought this was a new episode until I noticed John's hair was darker and face looked younger," which is both hurtful and fair. But that piece featured this clip of Trump back in 2011, laying out his whole fantasy of how tariffs could work.
Somebody said, well, what would you do? What can you do? So easy. I drop a 25% tax on China. And you know, I said to somebody that it's really the messenger. The messenger is important. I could have one man say, we're going to tax you 25%. And I could say another, listen, you motherfuckers, we're going to tax you 25%.
OK, putting aside how striking it is to hear the word motherfucker on C-SPAN, I kind of wish he just kept doing the voices there. You could have one guy say, listen, motherfuckers, we're going to tax you 25%, and you could have an Australian guy say, oh, you bloody dingo, we're going to tax you 25%, mate. Or you could have Bjork say, I would tax you 25 butterfly rainbow sneezes in happiness, shoop. There's all sorts of ways that you can do it, but the tariff is the important part. The point is, Trump has long believed that tariffs can fix our trade problems, and that's coupled with his insistence that trade is zero-sum, that if we buy more from another country than we are selling to them, we're somehow getting ripped off. But that is just not how it works, because we are getting things in return. As one Nobel-winning economist jokingly said, I run a chronic trade deficit with my barber, he never buys a damn thing from me, which is just a classic economist zinger. Nevertheless, Trump applied both those beliefs to his initial tariff plan, imposing massive penalties on countries indexed to the size of our trade imbalance, which led to some of the incredibly stupid calculations on Trump's chart, perhaps the dumbest of which was actually explained pretty well by Jim Cramer.
Let's go to the southern African nation of Lesotho, which
My trot.
had the misfortune of being one of the two most highly tariffed nations on Trump's list. They're being hit with a 50% duty on their exports to America. That happened because Lesotho only imported $2.8 million worth of U.S. goods last year, whereas we imported roughly $240 million worth of stuff from them. Now, the thing is, Lesotho's a really tiny country. Virtually everything we buy from them is either apparel or diamonds. But because it's a very poor country, they can't afford to buy much from us. So what happens now? To start, we're going to have to pay a lot more for any apparel or diamonds from Lesotho. Maybe we can replace the apparel, but diamonds? I mean, that's a lot harder. And the only way for Lesotho to get out of this jam is by importing more stuff from America, which it can't do because it doesn't have any money. So the president has likely just made things more expensive for Americans and not really changed the behavior of our trading partners.
He's right. Shit. Jim Cramer was right. I think I'm going insane. And quick side note there, if you're thinking, hold on, did he say Lesotho's sitting on top of a load?
You think that's a good analogy for these tariffs? It's like demanding your barber buy something from you since you spend money on their services? That's pretty funny. Except in this circumstance, the only thing you're selling is like the same product that your barber could get at a much more reasonable price, or, you know, or just something he literally cannot do anything with. I have a trade deficit with my grocery store. Oh, it's really up. This grocery store is fucking me over.
Of diamonds, but they still don't have any money. I know, but we don't have time. That's a different story that I'm sure we'll do one day. I'll put a post-it note on my computer and everything. And while Trump's temporarily paused those huge tariffs on Lesotho and others, it is worth asking, what exactly is his endgame here? And it depends on who you ask. When the tariffs first came down, some in the White House insisted they'd be permanent trade barriers intended to raise revenue and bring jobs back home, while others claimed they were a scare tactic designed to help us negotiate more favourable deals. But those are two very different goals with different consequences for businesses and workers who badly need to know which to plan for. So let's take each scenario in turn. And let's start with the idea that these tariffs are designed to shut out foreign competition and ensure stuff gets made here. There are a few issues with that, starting with the fact that lots of things aren't produced in the US, sometimes because they simply can't be at any kind of commercial scale. Even Trump's Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, pictured here rocking a cunty little bob, seemed to understand that last month when he said this.
Certain products, if I put a tariff on a mango, right? We can't grow mangoes in America. We just can't grow a mango. If you put a tariff on a mango, the mango would be more expensive. So then that's just like another version of income tax.
How do you
okay,
think
so
about...
the idea is to not do that.
Right.
It's a good thing that they did do just that. Like, literally on mangoes and coffee and pretty much everything else. Actually, they did do that. That's all they did.
The problem is, when the tariffs...
Yeah, it wouldn't be like an income tax. It's so funny because these guys are so fucking right-wing. The only enemy that they have is income tax. No, it's just the sales tax. It's a universal sales tax. That's what it is.
Or announced, mangoes weren't exempted, so we did do that. And sometimes it feels like the best way to ensure Trump does something is to tell him not to do it. He's like a toddler, both because his brain is unable to grasp negations and also because he has a short torso, huge head, always looks like he's about to fall over and won't let anyone brush his hair. That same logic applies to other crops like coffee and bananas, but that is not all, because it's also not easy to make electronics here. Take the Nintendo Switch 2. The company paused pre-orders for it this week because they didn't know how it'd be affected, as this analyst explained.
They got to figure out what they're going to get charged. Do they charge 50% more? Do they charge double? Do they even ship them?
How much of this is made in the U.S.? None of it.
None of it.
That is a good point, but an even better delivery of it. I want that guy on hand to respond to all other situations. How much birthday cake is left in the break room? None of it. How much of the Severance goat plot did you actually understand? None of it. How much of Trump's trade briefing did he genuinely read? None of it. And if you think, well, hold on, why don't we just build a switch factory here? Well, when it comes to high-tech goods, key components have to be sourced from complex global supply chains. So it's not a matter of simply building a factory. There is a lot more to it.
How much would it cost them to start manufacturing switches here in the U.S.?
Tens of billions of dollars.
Billions? That's because of a supply chain that's been built over decades.
It would take 4 to 5 years to even build and get done a factory here in the U.S. And the reality is the assembly, the supply chain's in Asia. If you just build a factory here in the U.S., where are you getting all the parts from? Still in Asia.
Yep.
Exactly. And some of those components are presumably about to be subject.
Damn, dude, who could have thought about all of this? Not the administration, of course. Dude, you want to know what the funniest part about this is? In order to build the factories, you need machinery. Let's say you have the working hands ready to build a factory. Where do you get the machinery from? Also fucking Asia. So you can't even... There's no, it's like assuming that someone who's a socialist has to exist outside of global capital. Like, you can't do it. America, the heart of empire, the heart of the design, the grand design that we have created, mapped out for global capital, now saying, I don't want to play no more. I don't want to be a part of this. You built it. You built the economy, dude. The fuck do you mean you don't want to be a part of it anymore? How are you going to get out of it?
Subjected to heavy tariffs. And quick side note, among the many things that I'm mad about right now is the fact that I have to spend time talking about how tariffs will impact the Switch instead of what I really want to talk about, which is that I only just learned the president of Nintendo in America is named Bowser. That man, I don't shit you even a tiny bit, is called Doug Bowser. Now, If you don't know, Bowser is quite famously the primary antagonist of Mario, the face of Nintendo. Now, in the comedy world, the president of Nintendo being named Doug Bowser is like someone gently setting a ball on a tee, handing you a bat and saying, please, have fun and swing away. But unfortunately, because this guy doesn't understand economics, I have to look at real Nintendo president Doug Bowser and say, sorry, everyone, no time for that. We've got math to do. It's a truly sad state of affairs, or to put it another way...
Oh, no!
Exactly. The point is... if these tariffs stand, they could have the opposite of the intended purpose, as some business owners might realise it's now cheaper to have a factory outside the US and not have to deal with tariffs. But let's say that despite all of that, we still want all those manufacturing jobs that we lost to come back home. First, as we've discussed before, a lot of them simply don't exist anymore because they've been automated. And second, even if we wanted to build brand new factories, it's worth knowing these new tariffs mean higher material and equipment costs for manufacturers wanting to do that. And in fact, tariff-swollen building costs have already helped to kill a $300 million plastics recycling plant in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is a real shame for multiple reasons, including that it would have helped make Erie, Pennsylvania, known for something other than the town that boiled a Revolutionary War general's corpse in order to separate his flesh from his bones so they could ship him back to his hometown. The idea there being, they reassemble the skeleton once he was in his final gravesite, but you guessed it, some bones wound up falling out of the wagon on the trek, as bones are wont to do. It's an incredible story, and thanks to the full recycling plant, remains the only thing I will ever know about Erie, Pennsylvania. And even if we do end up bringing some manufacturing jobs home, you also have to factor in that other countries will put tariffs on our goods in return, which will hurt other industries. The current massive tariffs on China are incredibly worrisome for people like this soybean farmer in Tennessee.
That trade relationship with China was built over decades and decades.
Will Hutchinson, a fourth-generation Tennessee farmer, says he is very concerned.
This is going to have an immediate and drastic impact to our ability to compete on the global marketplace for our goods that we produce here in this country.
Yeah, that literal soy boy is right. This is pointless. If I wanted to watch long-standing relationships destroyed in an instant, I'd just go to a basketball game to see which couples act weird when they end up on the Jumbotron. You can enjoy relationships falling apart without jeopardising the global economy. And at this point, I'm sure some Trump supporters are saying, well, these were never intended to be permanent. It's that second possibility that you mentioned earlier, that the tariffs were always just a way to give Trump leverage to renegotiate bad trade deals. And after he announced that 90-day pause, that was definitely the message getting sold.
This is the art of the deal. This shows how strong our president is.
A huge win for the president, a huge win for the country, his biggest accomplishment.
I like that he's doing this on the economy because it's like undeniable. It's just something that virtually all of the delusional f***ing losers that under other circumstances could just like shelter you from the public, like shelter the public opinion from the truth on. This is the one area where you can't really do that because it's just numbers and it hits your wallet. No, they're denying it, but it's not, people are not believing it. That's my point. And they will believe it even less when they actually start feeling the impact of it. Do you understand? There is virtually nothing you can do. You can't manufacture consent into being like, no, it's actually awesome that the thing that you bought for $5 is $10 now. Like, there's no amount of talking. There's no vibe sessioning your way out of this. Brandon couldn't do it either, okay? Think about it. The only reason why they seemingly can get away with it for the time being is because the stock market always wants desperately to constantly overperform. So people are just people are holding on to any whisper. People are holding on to any dream that it's like things are going to be good. And even then, Donald Trump seemingly f***ed that up every day too.
Accomplishment of the second term.
Trump won. He's doing exactly what he said he would do.
He's a genius in negotiating. He is very calculating in how he negotiates. He understands the art of the deal better than anyone, and he's gotten results in a very short period of time.
I don't know what's more desperate there, the shameless sucking up or the needs to put the words, "we told you not to freak," at the bottom of the screen, which is funny coming from Fox News of all places, considering most of their broadcasts feature messages like why you should absolutely freak about the green M&M. But let's at least consider the possibility this was all about gaining leverage for negotiating new deals. That was definitely the White House's spin after the pause was announced, with Trump's Treasury Secretary claiming it had happened because the tariffs brought more than 75 countries forward to negotiate. But a couple of things about that. First, the White House said it will not be releasing a list of the countries that had allegedly done that, so, you know. And remember, Trump's openly admitted the key reason for his climb down was people got the yippies. And remember, even with the pause, we still have 10% tariffs on nearly every country in the world, which is still massively disruptive, both to them and to us. And that includes countries like Singapore, where we're going to struggle to get a much better deal, given that we face no tariffs there and actually have a trade surplus. And I'm not saying there aren't countries where we have legitimate trade disputes, because there are, most notably China, where there are major issues, from their heavy subsidies for homegrown industries to their theft of US companies' intellectual property. Resolving those issues is difficult. It requires diplomacy and a coordinated strategy with our allies. But instead, we've alienated...
Not the IP theft. Oh no. Not the IP theft. I am, after all, Mr. Nintendo. I'm HP, not Hasan Piker, but Hewlett Packard. Mr. Hewlett and Mr. Packard, both at the same time. Did I even say that right? Is it Hewlett? Yeah, is Hewlett. I'm Mr. Hewlett and Mr. Packard. I hate the theft of IP. I know they're stealing the IP, and I'm still sending the manufacturing over there. That's right, I'm John Intel. I can't believe the Chinese are stealing our IP. You should be angry about that too.
those allies and are going into any future negotiation having provoked China into putting massive tariffs on our goods too. But don't worry, because Trump's charismatic Treasury Secretary doesn't seem to think they're going to be able to hurt us at all.
It was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation, because they're playing with a pair of twos. We are the deficit country. So what do we lose by the Chinese raising tariffs on us?
Is the IP theft not a real concern, though? Are you the CEO? Are you the inventor are you a patent holder of sorts? Why would that be a concern to you? No, actually, explain to me, in your words, why IP theft, that isn't even theft if it's like acknowledged and a part of the process, why would that be a concern to you? We call this, in the medical sector, okay, in medical patenting, we call this generics, okay? That's what that is. In the medical patent world, what you are describing is generics. You are saying that you are against generics. Do you not like generic drugs? Do you only want brand name drugs forever? What kind of impact would Chinese IP theft have on you? What kind of impact would Chinese IP theft, if this was real to begin with, if this was a real issue to begin with, like that our companies were just led by some of the dumbest people on the planet? I guess not me personally, but yeah, I see your point. Yeah, it's a way to just say something and hope that no working class individual ever thinks about it beyond the point that they're making, where they're like, oh, okay, how does this impact me in a negative way? Also, do you think that the American capital owners, like the American billionaire class and the millionaire class that ship manufacturing overseas, were just like blindsided by this? Do you think that after fucking 40 years of manufacturing, where they're still manufacturing in China and still complaining about IP theft on the other side, Do you feel like at a certain point, maybe you're fighting a battle that they're not fighting? Or are they just the dumbest people on the planet where they're like, well, I don't get it. They're doing IP theft. Okay. Brother, you're there. You're building it there. Do you think the sneaky shy comrades were able to be like, no, we won't steal your IP, of course. And then they kept doing it. And then everybody was like, oh, no, oh, they're stealing it. But also, maybe they won't steal it next time. Like, is that what you think was going on? And that's why they continued manufacturing in China? They cry about IP theft because why don't you care about my profits doesn't have the same ring to it. Exactly. Maybe after the first decade, you should have been like, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't build stuff here. Because after the first decade, okay, no, it's a genuine concern with regards to RP for technology and software. Ask Murat that question. Do you think Murat is going to be able to change my mind on this? Do you not know what my attitude towards IP is? I don't want there to be any I don't want there to be any digital enclosures of any sort. I don't believe in enclosures of any sort. I wish that we could have a global distributive system where everyone was working with the same goal, advancing humanity, okay? With no care or consideration for short-term profit seeking. Theft is theft. No. What do you mean theft is theft? By extension, are you saying we should do away with copyright as well? Oh, don't get me started. Yes, China taking the IP was always part of the exchange. You are naive if you don't realize that. I'm a firm and committed supporter of open source everything. Okay? That's what I believe. There would never be need for patents at all if there was no profit incentive in mind. Trash take. That's your worst take. Trash take. I know. Here come the tiny artists who think that like copyright or IP theft actually protects them against big corporations, and it's not just a way for big corporations to keep churning out profits. I know. They're coming after your furry drawings. Thank God for IP protections. I know. It's happening. Also, open source has shown that tech can develop at a much faster rate instead of being hamstrung by IP trolling corpos. Yeah, that's precisely the reason why, ironically enough, the AI monsters unironically want no IP protection right now. And then once they suck up all the data that's readily available, then they want to paywall it. How the do you think open source AI, how do you think AI works? There is definitely an argument that I will entertain as far as protecting your labor, okay, for a time period. COVID vaccine is a prime example of IP getting in the way of medically advancing the drug across nations to end the pandemic. Yeah, it's another example. It's kind of funny because we then turn around, we turn around and talk about like IP theft as though this is a real theft and not a handshake agreement where both parties consented to exactly what's happening. But then Americans will just like yell about it over and over again without ever really thinking about it.
We export 1/5 to them of what they export to us. So that is a losing hand for them.
Okay, setting aside that playing with a pair of two sounds like how you describe a threesome with Don Jr. and Eric.
Yeah. China has smart industrial policy, and Western corporations know they're giving up their IP when they enter into the Chinese market. China calls it technology transfer for market access.
That is incredibly simplistic because it ignores that China's leverage in a negotiation isn't confined to just tariffs. It can hurt us in other ways too, including by cutting off access to rare earth elements we may badly need. And before you think rare earth elements are just some fancy powder Gwyneth Paltrow adds to a morning smoothie to enhance vaginal wellness, you should know they're actually essential for everything from wind turbines to computer chips to F-35 stealth fighter jets. And incredibly, that Whoville tax accountant wasn't even the most reckless player in the Trump administration's messaging to China this week because J.D. Vance, true to form, was even more of a dick.
Hey, I sell jewelry I make on Etsy, and Chinese IP theft is a real problem for people doing the same, specifically from Chinese companies. Please address the argument you were waiting to entertain. It's really rich when you consider the jobs where you do nothing and have free time, where you sign works for hire contracts. What? It's okay for your Etsy shop. I am now in support of global IP protections for your Etsy shop. I hope that you can take it to some international court. Like, I make American manufactured, union made merchandise. Okay? And that merchandise directly gets sucked up by Redbubble and is also sold on those websites, on those Chinese drop shipping websites. They do it. They do it all the time. You can get it for $5, $10, however many dollars it costs. Okay? There's nothing I can do about it. At the end of the day, it is what it is. Where if you want the real thing and everything else that is associated with it, you get it from that website. If you don't have money to get it from that website because you don't have $35, then yeah, get it from China. Nothing I can do about it. You are a millionaire. Of course, IP theft doesn't affect your well-being. Sometimes take the dumbest stance just to own the libs of Megalol. No, you dumb fuck. It is, first of all, what fucking millionaire doesn't care about their own profit margins? It's because I have a very different attitude towards this sort of thing. That's the example that I'm making. That's the example that I'm giving. Directly, every fucking aspect of my commentary or the things that I do here, okay, I release the IP on so that there can be a fucking robust HasanAbi Clips industrial complex. Why do I do that? I could be making infinitely more money if I retained ownership over my own intellectual property and refused and used the pre-existing copyright system to take down every single channel that comes in, clips this shit, and posts it, and then monetizes it. Okay? And I had this exact same principle when I wasn't making money, and I have this exact same principle when I am making money. The idea that, like, oh, well, you make money, so it doesn't fucking matter, is so stupid. No, this is just a difference in opinion that I have that has not changed with the amount of money that I make over time. Yeah. Millionaires don't care so much about IP protection that Disney doesn't even seem to have lobbied to ever update intellectual property laws. Yeah, famously. Famously, rich people don't care about IP. That's why they always volunteer it. The entire point is that the fucking IP defense actually doesn't help you as much as you think it does. It is designed in a way to create enclosures around any sort of idea so that someone much more powerful and much wealthier than you can make money.
What has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on two principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow.
Only someone with the username Choosing Freedom could be dumb enough to think that anyone other than millionaires cares about IP theft. If he thinks it's a working class issue, his brain is too smooth to produce any actual thoughts. Like, anyway. I hope to live in a world where IP is not even a consideration. You understand? Where that's not even a problem. That's what my advocacy is. Because if you were making art for the sake of art, which obviously no one is at this point, like where all of your material needs are met, then this is not an issue for you at all. Obviously, we don't live in that reality, so I'm understanding of some of the safeguards that are in place. But make no mistake, that's the fucking goal. The goal is so you don't have to worry about these sorts of things at all. Because I think that that is how we truly evolve. Ideas building on top of one another.
Money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture.
Wow. I know it is hard to take from someone with this accent, but you are really not supposed to use the word peasants anymore. That is incredibly insulting, especially coming from the man who, remember, is next in line to run the country if anything were to happen to Elon Musk. So it is No wonder those comments went down pretty badly in China.
The government's response? Swift and scathing.
It's both astonishing and lamentable to hear this vice president make such ignorant and disrespectful remarks.
On China's tightly controlled internet, government censors are allowing Vance's interview to go viral, amplifying the outrage, igniting anger and sarcasm.
I told y'all. I told you. As soon as I heard him say Chinese peasants, I was like, uh-oh. That's gonna go the distance, dude. Ain't no fucking way.
Have you said thank you for the money we lent you? A reference to China being the second largest foreign holder of U.S. government debt, and that infamous Oval Office exchange with Ukraine's president.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid burn. And I guess, in a way, it's reassuring to know that despite our differences, the American and Chinese people can come together to agree that it is fun to dunk on this cursed Cabbage Patch bitch. And look, you can say, well, that's all well and good, but I still trust Trump to make a deal. But here's the thing. We actually know what happens when he starts a trade war, because remember, he did a version of this in his first term, and it didn't go great. If you look back at his tariffs back then, protecting specific products and industries like washing machines and steel, they might have worked in a narrow sense by creating modest job gains. They're credited with creating or saving several thousand jobs in the steel industry and creating around 1,800 jobs manufacturing washing machines. But in the broader sense, those jobs cost us a lot. Trump's tariffs wound up raising prices to the point where it's estimated American consumers and businesses.
The way you smack down that commenter about your merch not being affected has me questioning your understanding of people that are not millionaires. Dude, what are you talking about? Do you think this has anything to do with me being a millionaire, or do you think this has something to do with me not caring about IP? What the fuck is wrong with you? When have you ever met a millionaire, or a billionaire for that matter, who hasn't cared about IP? Do you think millionaires and billionaires sit around and go, yeah, I don't care about actually retaining profit over this thing? The fuck is wrong with you? I don't care. That's my point. That's my argument. I don't care. And I'm understanding of people who do, especially when they don't have any money whatsoever. And this is their only fucking way of making money. Do you think that this is a normal attitude that everybody has? Do you think, like, that's why the other chatter bringing up the Disney example was perfect? Think about it. What fucking YouTuber you know that doesn't actually manufacture their products in China oftentimes, and also greatly mark it up on top of everything else? And it's not even just the t-shirts. It's literally directly what I do, right? I don't maintain copyright over my own commentary either. There's not a single instance of someone rich or poor that is like, oh yeah, I don't really give a shit about it. If you want to make money, it's great. Oh, this is the dumbest version of this argument, for the record, was when someone said, oh, you don't care about higher taxes because you're rich. That was, I think, the dumbest argument I've ever encountered on this broadcast. It made me reset my brain for a little bit. Like, that's not an argument. You're not making an argument that is based in reality. Okay? What rich person do you know that advocates for these sorts of things? You won't be able to relate to chatters until you stop reading. I think I won't be able to relate to this chatter until I can start banging my head on a wall. Your product is yourself, though. What about writers, artists, and musicians who get their products stolen? Genuine question. Don't hate, please. Dude. You want to know how I made all this money? This right here. Do you know what this is? OBS. Okay? It's open source. That's how I made all the money. You understand? Yeah. Open source made me. If IP were a genuine idea, its advocates would be still paying royalties to the guy who paved their driveways 20 years ago. Yeah. And also, like I said, I don't even retain copyright over this. This right here, what you're watching currently, this right here, you could just rip and post on a YouTube channel, as many do, and monetize. And I literally do turn around and advocate for your continued monetization whenever YouTube comes after you unjustifiably and tries to take you down. So what the are you talking about? So yeah, this is how I make the money, right?
Had to pay more than $900,000 a year for every steel job created and over $800,000 a year for each job making washing machines, putting the total cost of those jobs in the billions of dollars. And that's before you get to the fact that because his tariffs on metals drove up costs for other industries, one study estimated they actually resulted in as many as 75,000 fewer manufacturing jobs. And when it comes to China in particular, his first-term tariffs did bring in billions by raising the costs of their goods here. But the broader damage to American farmers after China retaliated was so severe that 92% of what we collected went right back out the door in the form of bailouts to them. And the kicker is, we didn't get much out of all of that. Because after a trade agreement was reached, Trump excitedly bragged he'd got China to commit to purchase an additional $200 billion in US products. But later analysis showed it effectively bought none of those goods. None of them. But please, don't worry. I'm sure Trump definitely learned his lesson, and this time he's going to get an empty promise for $500 billion. Fool him once, shame on him. Fool him twice, that's basically what everyone does. And remember, Trump's first-term tariffs are absolutely dwarfed by what he's done over the last 2 weeks. And it's not like he's negotiating from a particularly strong position right now, because everyone knows he just blinked. The bond markets got the yippies, and he blinked. And again, it's good that that happened. I'm glad he blinked. But it's weird to claim it's a brilliant negotiating tactic when you've already backed down before a single deal is reached. And the thing is, this could all cost us an awful lot, because maybe the most striking thing over the past 2 weeks has been the degree to which it's become clear the world's trust in America has been shattered. This isn't just the ordinary give and take of negotiations. Countries are openly saying things are different now. Canada's Prime Minister actually summed it up pretty well the day after Trump's initial round of tariffs were announced.
The global economy is fundamentally different today than it was yesterday. The system of global trade anchored on the United States that Canada has relied on since the end of the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped to deliver prosperity for our country for decades, is over. Well, this is a tragedy. It is also the new reality.
Wow, that is a bleak thing to hear. Tragedy is the new reality is a grim summation of the state of world affairs, but also, I'm just going to say it, kind of a fucking bar. Honestly, you slap that title on a new Fall Out Boy album, the girls are going feral. And it's not just world leaders. Investors are making it clear they no longer have the trust they once did in the stability of the American economy. Usually, when the stock market drops, the market for US government bonds improves because they're seen as a safe investment. This week, though, they both went down, which is a terrible sign. As one economist put it, investors and central banks are selling treasuries and dollars due to a loss of confidence and credibility in American assets. Financial chaos has its cost. That is bad. And by the way, that is from Friday after the pause was announced. And that is the thing. While everyone may want to pretend that this crisis is past us, it's just not. Even Chuck Schumer seemed to miss that point when he tweeted out, "History will remember April 9th, 2025 as America's actual liberation day, the day that President Trump backed down from his ridiculous tariff fiasco."
Except he didn't.
But it's not over, Chuck. We dodged a bullet, but the monkey still has a gun. And incidentally, if anyone watching this is close to Chuck Schumer right now, please take his phone, take it out of his hand, and throw it into the fucking ocean. So what do we do? Well, ideally, Congress would realise just how close we came to financial Armageddon and take away the president's power to unilaterally impose tariffs. There's actually a bill in Congress right now, co-sponsored by Chuck Grassley, that would require the White House to justify tariffs and then give lawmakers the opportunity to reject them within 60 days of enactment, which seems more than reasonable. The problem is, you're going to need 67 votes to beat a presidential veto, and Republicans like Senator John Kennedy are refusing to sign on using this logic.
I have not joined the Grassley bill. I'm not likely to join the Grassley bill. The Grassley bill will not pass, and I just think it's a distraction. The most immediate question for me is, the president is a pit bull. He's won. He's caught the car. The question is, what's he going to do with the car?
Rhodes Scholar all of a sudden singing quite a different tune.
That is a shitty answer in so many different ways, but the main one is the whole idiom, the dog that caught the car, is based on the fact dogs have no plan for what to do after they catch it. That is damning enough alone. No one says he's like the dog that caught the car as phase one of the dog's long-term strategy to reshore manufacturing. Also, you're a co-equal branch of government. It is your job to stop that dog, not stand back and say, I don't know, guys, let him cook. There's always the chance of an Airbud situation here. Look, I don't know where things are going to go next. We're taping this on Saturday. Who knows what's happened between now and when you are seeing this? Maybe Trump will have rolled the tariffs back even further. Maybe he'll have put even bigger new ones on mangoes. What is clear is that he's destabilising our economy with no real plan of action. And all I'll say is, if our next episode opens up with me sitting next to a chart of the NASDAQ and Miss Piggy, it means we are fucked.
He didn't even get that mad about China. I don't know why chatters are being so overprotective. I thought he was going to be way more critical of China somehow, to be like, yeah, it's the dang Chinese that stole from us or some shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was tiny, and it created a much larger dispute where every small business owning artist in my chat is now up in arms and wants to kill me because of my takes on IP that I have repeated 1,000,000 times over. IP protections for small business owners that are artists themselves, artisans themselves, that is helpful, albeit marginally, for you. It's majorly helpful for big business owners. I was joking. Nobody believes that shit, right? No, everybody believes that. Yes, there are a lot of people who believe that in here. You know what I mean? Yes, but just because something that was my livelihood under capitalism happens to also be wielded by megacorps doesn't mean it's inherently flawed as a concept. It just means that capitalism and the massive wealth inequality and class system here is flawed. In a world where there was, in a world where all of your material needs were met, you would do this just for the sake of not money, but you would do what you're doing for the sake of credit. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be fairly compensated for their work. I think they should be. I do think, however, that IP in and of itself is another form of enclosures and unfortunately gets used and abused by big business for the most part, rather than used as a way for small artisans and artists to be able to defend their intellectual property. I'm much more understanding of IP or some kind of patent structure for something like art, as opposed to tech and medicine and things of that nature. Why do people get so sensitive about your opinions and not a groundbreaking take? Because it feels like people that like everything else that I say feel as though I'm coming after them directly, individually, hurting them, hurting their business, hurting their livelihood. Every time we have an IP conversation, this comes up. And people get mad at me and say, dude, you just want me to die. This is how big businesses get to tell Americans that China is stealing your IP, and then they get mad. Everybody gets mad and thinks, oh, IP theft, it's unacceptable. I am a firm believer in the Gaben, Marxist-Leninist Gabenist thinking, okay? In terms of piracy being a service problem, I fully agree with it. When I was growing up in Turkey, I would have never been able to play these video games if it wasn't for piracy. So it's going to be very difficult to convince me that piracy is bad. It allows so many people to experience the same joys that other people experience as a direct consequence of being able to get it by stealing it. So it's great.